45 minutes. Okay, so let's get started with the panel. Can we start with some intro? So Remy, shortly, and then walk down.
Yeah, so my name is Remy Bergsma. I'm from the Netherlands, Schuberg-Phyllis. Working a lot with CloudStack, just showed some things, and I'm also the release manager for 4.6 currently.
Hi, I'm Neil Stobart, so I'm the European Technical Director at Cloudian. So Cloudian's a relatively new company focusing on object storage, but we primarily work with S3 API, and we're seeing a lot of interest in using S3 storage in the CloudStack community. Working with a whole bunch of customers to provide that secondary storage in this area. So I come from a block storage company, so it's very, very new for me. So be gentle.
We're going to try it soon.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Chiradeep, early contributor to CloudStack and the community, PMC member. Sorry for all the bugs, but...
I'm Mike Tutkowski. I work at SolidFire in Boulder, Colorado. I'm on the project management committee for CloudStack. Been doing this about 3 years. I guess my first day at SolidFire actually was getting my laptop and flying out to Las Vegas for the first CloudStack collaboration conference. So it's coming up on 3 years.
Cool. Thanks, guys. So first question to Remy. So what did you think about my statement on focus on quality and a new release management process? We've had lots of discussions on the list. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very good idea. We worked on this before already. We started I guess 3 months ago, and I really think that if we are able to maintain a high quality, and the way to do it is to use automation, because I want to achieve a situation like you said every month, but it would be cool even faster. So we need velocity to deliver as soon as a new feature is there. Bam, go with the new feature. And we can achieve such a thing if we are able to run automated tests on all of our pull requests. So we have many pieces of the puzzle. They're not just glued together. And what I want to achieve is that if somebody sends a pull request, that it gets tested. And some of them are in there right now, but I want it to be tested on a real cloud. So I want that we spin up an environment with real hypervisors, that we can run all the Marvin tests that we have, and that we can say, hey, this thing is okay, or it breaks, this and this other thing. And then before we even merge it, we already know about it. So that's a high level goal. And then we can have the velocity and the speed. New quota feature, okay, merge it, bomb, new version, next. And that's the thing. So I think that would be really cool.
Great. So I have a mic, so if you guys want to step in and ask questions to the panelists, don't hesitate, just raise your hand and I'll come over and give you the mic, okay? But let me follow up with Shredip. So you've been with CloudStack, since the beginning. So what do you think about this new process? Do you think it can help release faster and better?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I work in Citrix, one of the primary contributors to CloudStack. So internally, when Citrix does its releases, it follows exactly the same process, that any check-in gets tested. Internally, we have an internal bare metal automation system which deploys hypervisors automatically, runs the Marvin tests, and then flags it immediately every night, whether there's a bug fix, build break or not. And so this is how we get stability on the older releases that we're supporting for our customers. There's still customers on 3.07, there's customers on 4.2, and so this is the only way that we can keep up with the 8 different releases we're juggling at the same time.
Okay. Well, one of the issues that I was mentioning, all those solutions providers. So when we do testing on bare metal, the problem that we have in the community is that we don't have all that hardware and all those solutions. So at the ESF, we don't have SolidFire hardware or Cloudian, set up to be able to test those plugins. So Mike, can you comment on that? How could we solve that problem? Or I know you do a lot of testing for SolidFire, but
right. So one of the areas I've been working on recently is finishing up the suite of automated integration tests that I had wanted to do from kind of years ago. I just didn't really have a whole lot of time to do that. But as you say, I've always done the manual testing end to end, but it just doesn't scale. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually building out an automated testing infrastructure in our lab at SolidFire. And then on my own kind of cadence, I've been maybe daily or weekly running these tests and just catching things fast. So if something breaks one of my tests, I know about it now rather than a month from now and I have to go through just lists and lists of commits. It's obviously a much more scalable process. I'd like to have it somehow linked into, I mean, maybe it doesn't have to run every single commit that gets checked in through a pull request, but it would be nice if I could just kind of nightly pull everything down, run through my suite of tests, and then find out in the morning if anything's been broken and deal with it then. So that's definitely one of the areas that I've been putting a lot of focus in the last month or so. I've been doing presentations at CloudStack Days, talking about integration testing. I'm super happy that the community is really on board with this now. That was one of the things when I first started about 3 years ago. It seemed like we didn't really have any direction in terms of like what needed to actually be done in terms of testing. Did it have to be just unit testing? Did it have to be, it wasn't very clear. We're really getting a better hold on that now, I think. And that's super big improvement in my mind. It's much less Wild West than it used to be.
Cool.
Can I ask you a question about this?
Yeah, sure.
So this is really cool. This is one of the pieces of the puzzle that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And I would like to see if hardware vendors can actually have like a virtual environment. So something that either mocks the API or, well, like Cloudian, for example, we talked about having a very small object store VM that actually, it's not about the storage behind it, it's more about running all the tests and mocking everything.
Yes.
Because then we can glue those things together.
And I think that, I mean, I forgot to bring that up too, because we do have kind of like a virtual node concept that we can check out virtual nodes from our lab environment as well. Because a lot of times I don't need a full-blown, like you say, I don't need a full-blown SolidFire cluster to test a lot of my integration with CloudStack. In fact, a lot of times we have an automated system to build up environments for us, put a certain version of the hardware together with a certain version of the software. And a lot of times I'm just running it on a single SolidFire node, which you would never do in production. And it's because of that very reason. I just want the API. And so, yes, I did omit saying that, but a virtual node concept is definitely something I'm looking into.
Because then we can we can make the next step and hook it into Jenkins and say, hey, if somebody sends a pull request,
Yes.
we're gonna build this and spin this up. Because that's also something I've been working on with Fred, he was over there at Uber Phyllis, because we wanted a situation that we could deploy a cloud with a single one-nighter so that Jenkins could do it later on.
Yes.
And so what we did, so Citrix is doing it with bare metal hardware like you described, and we decided to go the virtual way because then we could scale much better. And thanks to the nested hypervising that you can do today in KVM with the newer hardware as well, so the Sandy Bridge hardware really helps. We actually deploy a VM in CloudStack, which is 64 gigs, and it's running CentOS 7. It's running KVM over there, and inside that we have all kind of automation. So we spin up different VMs, so hypervisors, Xen server and KVM are there now, but we also worked on ESX for a bit. So you can spin all those, and then you just point to a Marvin configuration file and say, hey, build me this cloud. And then I need to talk to you about Docker, because right now we build everything and then start a VM, but it would be cool if we could do this with Docker. Spin up the management server, deploy everything, and then run all the tests, and you can then report back and say, hey, this is okay, or this breaks, this and this. And this makes it scalable as well, so if you have enough resources, and I think there are enough companies to contribute to that, to make that happen. And if vendors also have the virtual things, then everything comes together, and we can get the velocity again.
Yeah, definitely. I think if we can get that virtual piece up and running, getting it into CloudStack's sort of main core infrastructure would be ideal. Yeah.
And we can work like with slaves, right? So we have Jenkins in place, that's awesome, and we can start building slaves that can do this. And to get up to speed, I think we can host a few of them, but the goal would be to have a distributed network in, I mean, with all these public clouds, so they can maybe run these boxes as well.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
So Neil, can you? I'll circle back to the testing, but can you give us a little bit of an intro on the Cloudian Object Store and how it integrates with CloudStack?
Yeah, sure, and actually relates as well to this conversation. So, you know, how do we kind of keep, you know, compatibility across, you know, different revisions as you move forward. So, you know, we, you know, try and adhere to Amazon's S3 standard as close as possible. So, you know, we do this similar, you know, our you know, bug level reporting as Amazon. So, you know, we're seeing so many, you know, independent software vendors developing to support S3. It's probably you know, one of the fastest growing areas right now. So, in the 6 months I've been at Cloudian, you know, we were talking about 500 vendors support S3. 3 months later, it was 2,000. I think we're now talking 4,000 vendors support S3 in some way. To do that, you know, the API has to be, you know, very standard. And of course, Amazon, you know, they develop it, they code it, they own it. So our marketing guys love to say that it's 100% compatible, and I don't think you can say that, you know, unless you control the code. So we try and be, I think it was something like 93% compatible, which is way, you know, more advanced than anybody else out there. The things that we don't do, the 7%, is things we just don't think that people are going to use in kind of like private cloud scenarios, or the, you know, the file collaboration, which is, you know, where we see a lot of the demand for this. So, you know, to kind of get back to the point, is you know, running S3 API compatibility is absolutely key, and I think you've just got to, you know, from your community, you've just got to make sure that you're kind of following that standard. Exactly. And of course, as a sort of an S3 client, which is what you're implementing it as, you can start to look at, well, do we want to add some of the more features? Because Amazon sort of break it down into sort of basic, medium, and then advanced feature sets. You know, do all of the advanced feature sets deliver something that's worthwhile? You know, deliver value into the environment, and you know, and if you're going to do that, you know, you can kind of be confident it's going to work with us because we've already looked at that. The other piece on the testing is, you know, we actually can deploy in a virtual machine, and I'm sitting here thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had a template in CloudStack, you know, for Cloudian, and, you know, you want to build out a big, you know, object secondary storage store, and then you can just roll out the templates. So maybe that's something that we can start to look at.
Yeah, that's where I was going actually. Because, yeah, you know, it would be great to get some of you guys help, you know, to work also on the CloudStack side to make sure that the CloudStack S3 client, you know, can talk to your object store.
So there are
without breaking anything.
There's a couple of compatibility tests out there, and then it shows, you know, where it works, where it doesn't work. So in fact, you know, Ceph, even though they're not quite so strong on S3 as us, but they've got this test, and it's a very good benchmark, and I think you guys have actually used it to look at some of the client S3 clients and some of the kind of the S3 servers, if you like. Yeah. And it's something that we're now kind of saying to our customers, hey, if you want really great S3 compatibility, run the Ceph S3 test, and it will tell you, you know, what you can get, what you can't get. So that's I think something that you should possibly build into, you know, looking at how you're deploying.
So maybe Guido or Pierre-Luc, you can comment on the state of the S3 interface in CloudStack.
On the object storage portion, I know that on the object storage secondary storage portion, you can use S3 on as the secondary storage as well as Swift. All the functionality are there, from what I understand. More than that, I'm not aware of anything else on my side.
But Swift is a different implementation, right? So we have S3 and there's...
I think it's a different code base than the CloudStack code.
I heard some criticism that our integration with S3 was not great. Swift integration is not good?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of limitations and really a lot of, let's say, problems that we faced at least.
Yeah.
Even some old API and libraries and so on.
Okay, so maybe you guys should talk.
S3 was supposed to be much better. I think that's a problem though.
Yeah. Guido, maybe do you know more about the state of S3? Because with Ceph, do you go directly to S3?
Yeah, well, we are running in production as well, but the SDK we're using right now inside CloudStack is kind of outdated. So we're using the Amazon SDK to talk to S3, and we found some bugs. It took me 3 nights actually to find a bug, which was a one-liner, which actually caused our public cloud to
Those are the
keep
best
downloading templates over and over and over again from S3. So it's on our roadmap, actually our wish list to fix it and to fix a lot of things with the S3 integration.
Cool.
But it works now. It works, but there's some small glitches and catches which we fixed.
So Neil, it would be great to get some help from Cloudian engineers to help us fix that internally.
Yeah.
Make sure that we work well with your object store. Cool. So I want to move on a little bit from the testing because we're gonna talk more about testing, and Remy has a talk, and there's gonna be a new another session on testing. But looking at the way IT evolves, and there's the big craze about Docker and so on. So it seems to me that there is less attention on cloud these days, even though definitely companies are still working hard on adopting clouds. So where do you see IT and enterprise IT going, and do you see CloudStack still being adopted and people embracing clouds, or maybe something else? I don't know, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I know from personal experience, I'm kept quite busy dealing with new prospects who are interested in pretty much if it's a CloudStack opportunity at SolidFire, I'm involved with that. And I just know from that personal experience, I've been quite busy talking to prospects. So it does seem like people are quite interested in building out CloudStack clouds. A lot of my work there entails kind of explaining how the SolidFire integration works. So sometimes, especially as we've actually gotten more and more documentation in place, I haven't always been brought in on every single deal. A lot of times people can, our systems engineers can handle a lot of things in the field without bringing me in. So I can just say that I'm kept quite busy even just with the deals that they are bringing in, let alone with the things that I'm not even aware of. So it does seem to me like there's a big push and interest from people looking to build out both private and public clouds with CloudStack.
I think the thing about the newer stuff like Docker or PaaS or Image, they're very application centric, and that's the focus that's been missing from the whole cloud space. And so it explains a lot of the popularity. And so, but it also means that the app guys, they don't want to worry about the infrastructure, right? So that's why it's popular to them. And if you dig deeper into these solutions, they're relying on the underlying IaaS to provide persistent volumes, to provide the distributed networking, to provide fancy networking features. And they're never going to do that because they're not going to touch the bare metal, they're not going to touch the switches, they're not going to touch the load balancers. And so, or at least I don't see that happening in the near future because these are application guys. And so I think they will always rely on IaaS to do a lot of that heavy lifting for them. And they'll focus on the high level application orchestration.
But I really like the things around it. So it's like a commodity. I agree with that. But tools like Terraform that you talked about, and Docker, and all those automated tests around it, Cloud Foundry, they make it so easy that you don't have to think about this anymore. And even the more complex scenarios, like VPCs and VPNs in between them, maybe across multiple zones, that can be just defined in a text file. You can just type it. You don't have to think about it, and that's deploy it.
Yep.
And that way, you have fancy infrastructure without even.
But it's there, right? I mean, if without the cloud platform underneath it, the cloud stack underneath it, you wouldn't be able to do these things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's people getting used to it.
Yeah.
And actually they think it's infrastructure as a service, but most things on top of it, it's like Amazon does. They say we do infrastructure as a service, and they do, but they do a lot of stuff around it as well, which is actually not infrastructure as a service. And that's what people demand from other clouds. We have this in our company as well, that there are all kind of services around it that makes this a very rich experience that people can deploy on.
Yeah, and so IaaS, it cannot be just IaaS. It has to be an application solution as well. Otherwise, your cloud is not complete.
Yeah, and that's the ecosystem you talked about, which is really cool.
But I think as growing up as an infrastructure guy, you like to think that your bit, I've been a storage guy for something like 20 years, love to think that storage is the important thing, and everyone, I'm absolutely key to, an organisation's business, but it's, storage or networks or even compute, that's not what really delivers value to the organisation. It's the data and it's the application. That's what people want, and I think, public cloud has, really exploded, over the last few years. I think one, because there's a perception that it's cheap. Two, was the flexibility. They don't want to go to the IT department. The guy in the business unit, he wants to spin up a new application. It's flexible. You can get it, literally within seconds or minutes, I suppose, a little bit more realistic. So I think what we've got is it's just the evolution of IT. It's moving to an SLA-led organisation, and that's exactly what CloudStack delivers. So I talk a lot to large financial institutions in London, and they would love to be what you guys are doing, what the service providers are doing. They'd love to have that internally, because actually they're big infrastructures, and they need to streamline that. They need to cut costs to stay competitive in the market, like any business, right? But they've got the scale, so it's going to be the bigger companies that use it, the bigger enterprise commercial companies that'll go first, and then you'll sort of see an evolution where it becomes it'll drive the technology to make it simpler and simpler, and more development goes into it, and then you will get to a point where it's just one IT guy kind of is maintaining, so we can just push the buttons and roll out the service. So I think it's just that evolution moving to a service level driven IT. There's a nice curve, isn't there? You're going from sort of tactical managing problems up to true service level deployment.
Yeah, and the things in between, there will be a hybrid thing. And it's also what we face, there will be legacy systems. Let's hope there will get less of them, and then find a way to connect it and to migrate them and to make it flexible. Because sometimes people face, well, if this legacy enterprise application, I can never do cloud. And then if you don't start it, you're never going to do it. But if you have a way to start doing it, then maybe in 4 or 5 years, you get used to it, and there's only 10% left of what you have.
Well, it was like the shift from mainframe to client server, and there's still, well, yeah, which is kind of, what we'll go back to in a way. It's just that cycle of IT.
So just above our heads, conference is going on called MesosCon, and we're seeing a lot of shift in focus from the application-centric to being service-centric. And when we're thinking about the future of CloudStack, how do we ensure that things like Mesos and Kubernetes, who are orchestrating services from a service perspective rather than looking at individual machines, works well in CloudStack, and that we don't lock ourselves out of that type of supportability, even if we're not going to be the service scheduler like a Mesos or a Kubernetes.
Well, if it runs on top of CloudStack, we should be able to verify it. So we can work together with the Mesos community and see, well, if we deploy that on top of CloudStack, we can do verification if it works properly, do automation around it maybe, and provide it as a package to our users to say, hey, if you want to deploy such a system, this is all you have to do, and then it will work. And we should make sure, of course, that it will keep working.
I have a Packer and a Terraform solution to deploy Mesos on CloudStack. But that's not the end of it, right? I mean, Mesos itself is pluggable, and I think we should look at ways we can enhance the scheduler. For example, we have support for affinity groups, whereas Mesos is not aware of the underlying hardware, right? So if it thinks that 2 VMs are not on the same failure domain, then it might schedule an HA thing there, but they may actually be on the same failure domain because there are 2 VMs on the same host. So we can certainly enhance Mesos and other such solutions to provide increased reliability. We can provide very sophisticated networking solutions. As I said before, a lot of these cluster management solutions assume that there is L2 and L3 reachability between the host and the cluster, which may not be true. So there's, again, we can provide solutions there.
So surely you mentioned that, you know, a little bit of a shift with people thinking more in terms of application rather than infrastructure. Do you think we should do something in CloudStack to actually help manage applications rather than infra?
I don't think it's the job of our community. I think we are infrastructure focused, and that's the right place to be. But I don't think we should ignore them either. And then we should actively look to provide solutions or demonstrate interoperability.
Yeah, work with them.
And work with them to show that CloudStack is going to be an excellent tool in their tool chest to get scalable infrastructure up and running.
And that's exactly the ecosystem, right? So you don't want to build everything from the ecosystem inside CloudStack, because there would be no focus. We would unable to do anything.
So let me bring in Chip, who's looking at his phone. You know, Chip, you move from you move from CloudStack to the Cloud Foundry Foundation, and definitely there are lots of enterprises that are adopting Cloud Foundry because they have that focus on application deployment, lifecycle, and so on. How do you think, you know, CloudStack and Cloud Foundry should or can work together so that, you know, people can use Cloud Foundry easily on CloudStack, and where is the frontier between the two?
Well, so if I presume that people understand the Cloud Foundry platform, which is probably a bit of a leap, let's just simplify and say it's all about deploying applications, and there's a distributed systems release management layer within the Cloud Foundry ecosystem or stack, and it's called Bosch. And there's a layer within Bosch which allows for portability into various IaaS APIs. And so that's called a cloud provider interface. Orange has actually spent a lot of time recently making sure that an older NTT Communications created Bosch CPI is not being maintained. I know there's also work occurring in some other hidden corners of the, I'm guessing, European market right now, because I'm getting messages about it. I was looking at my phone. So I think that's a pretty straightforward process, right? So as with tools like Terraform, they're thoughtful about making sure that they can work with different infrastructure platforms. You know, Cloud Foundry is also very thoughtful about that, and the interface for the CloudStack community is to ensure that the features required to deliver the application experience are solid, and frankly are consistent, you know, release over release, so that there's not a lot of churn unless there's reason for change. That answer your question, or am I just rambling?
No, that's fine.
But where it also maps together is that what I see from those orchestration tools like Cloud Foundry and Terraform is that they are so fast that new problems in CloudStack pop up because of scheduling. Things that people could never click or send API or script before now starts to go wrong because of these issues. And that's maybe our challenge to work with, if we know our end users will be working with those tools, to do some testing around that and to see what are the bottlenecks and how can we improve that. I think that's more our role to improve rather than trying to mimic that everything.
Yeah, computers are hard.
Yeah, and fast.
So Chip, is it fair to say that a lot of the people deploying Cloud Foundry do it on VMware, like vCenter type stuff, or?
Yeah, a lot of them do. There's a lot of VMware. There is a good bit of it happening on CloudStack, OpenStack, and quite a bit actually out on Amazon directly.
Oh, okay. Maybe we can take a couple of questions from the audience. Like, you know, a lot of you guys are running CloudStack, and what are your customers or users doing with CloudStack, and are they requesting some features to you that they would like CloudStack to be able to do?
I have one.
Yeah.
Particular one. Scalability of the virtual router. That's one. Because there's the standard VR when you run like thousands of customers, each one with a particular domain.
But that's a request from you. That's not a request from your users.
It is because the capacity of the VR wasn't enough.
Okay.
So they had a big backend. They wanted to use the load balancer. At some point, we got the memory was full of connections, so we need to scale it up.
Okay.
And without affecting the other customers. So if it's okay for the other customers, we shouldn't touch it. But these particular ones.
Okay. So that's really a core feature of CloudStack. It's not something that's really a totally new domain like application deployment or something like that.
Maybe a bit of topic.
And anybody else?
Well, we can also take it offline because I think that can already be done, but we'll discuss it later.
Okay.
Yeah, it can certainly be done. You can certainly do it, if you have access to the admin interface, you can certainly change the
Network offering.
service offering that's used for the VR. So just be
But you have to.
adding something either in the API or the UI or both, where the customer, the end user, could actually,
Yeah, and you can even
Yeah.
upgrade and downgrade between offerings. Yeah.
Do you have to shut it or is it live?
Upgrade is you got to shut it. Yeah.
I mean, that's
You could
actually his
probably-
point because that interrupts service. But you can fail it over to another one.
Yeah.
But if the drivers are available in the VM, you should be able to scale it up but not down.
Exactly.
But I think the orchestration, the way it works today, I think it shuts it down first and then brings up a new one.
We actually destroyed it.
Yeah.
Any other use case of features that some of your users might be asking for? Yeah.
I don't know how relevant it is now, but I saw some paper about written by some Alex long time back on DR, especially not with reference to the MySQL replication kind of thing, but actual interzone DR. Is there any roadmap? Okay, it was there in the Citrix roadmap, but
But what would you want to achieve then? Because it sounds, if I understand this correctly, there is a zone and you have clusters and pods and VMs in there,
right.
and then you want to do something in the event of a disaster to fail it over.
Correct.
But the whole cloud idea, in my opinion, is to have multiple zones and deploy your application across multiple, and I just accept that one of those zones can go down.
You're looking at it from an ISP's perspective or a service provider's perspective. This is more from an enterprise customer's private cloud
Yeah, I can imagine, because in order to do that, you're right, you need to adjust some things in your application. You need to have full control, and that's always the biggest challenge. To have an application to make it completely available, you need to deploy it over multiple sites.
GSLD.
Yeah, GSOB is one thing to do it, but then you still have the data replication going on. But the thing is actually, what would you want CloudStack to do?
I think the DR feature he's talking about was never proposed in the community. It was never developed. It was a feature to, and frankly, I'm not sure why you would want it. So the idea was that if you got CloudStack in one data center, the data center burns down, can you restart CloudStack in a different data center but recreate all the resources that were in that zone? For instance, all the VMs, the network offerings, the service offerings.
That we can do, I think, but then about the data. How are you going to make sure that your data
Yeah,
is there?
so exactly. So it wasn't a complete solution. I think it was really
And I think it's very expensive because you have one empty zone with hardware lying around all the time.
It was half-baked, definitely. Yeah. I'm not sure why we're discussing it even. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that it's never
so
going to be there.
I'll add to this. One gentleman in the morning said about a bank. They would specifically have a RPO of close to 0 from a data perspective.
Yes.
So,
But they, for example, it depends, you know. But if you use like Oracle as a backend for your database, then there are two ways to solve it. You can either solve it in the infrastructure, that's the classic way to do it. So then you buy fiber channel stuff across 2 data centers, and well, you do all this expensive thing. That's not cloudy. That's not something modern, but you can still do it if you want. That would be in one zone anyway, because you cannot stretch it across multiple. The other way to do is to use, for example, Oracle RAG or some other tools where you have iSCSI coming from two different storages, or maybe even SolidFire, I don't know if they support such a thing. And then from the application layer, it just does all the writes twice. Okay. So in the event that something goes wrong, and then for example, GSB comes into play as well, because you have one application stack in one CloudStack cloud and one in the other, could even be a completely different cloud, and then fail it over, or do it later. So the GSB is about the public IP question then that you have to load balance it between it. But it's all about moving it up the stack, not solving it in infrastructure, but way higher.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I think we have to accept that a lot of enterprises have non-cloudy architectures.
Exactly.
And as we talk about us being a user-driven community, so we can't be telling them they're wrong. You don't want that, you shouldn't want that. They do. So I do think we need to listen to the enterprises of what they want, and we need to be able to deliver what they need right now, because then we become a stepping stone to them moving to the cloud, because we're already running their architecture through CloudStack. Then we can get them to use cloudy type software. They can actually start building.
Yep.
They're not going to be able to throw out their AS400s and just switch on a cloudy architecture tomorrow. That's not going to happen.
Exactly, because that's also why I said, you have these two different worlds, and you need to bridge them together somehow. Exactly. And that's the way to have the best of both worlds, actually.
And for some people, DR is a really, really difficult thing to do. But for some people, things like that are going to be important, and that will bring a lot of people running to the CloudStack doorstep. And then we can enable them to move on and get away from that.
But I think what we need to do then is find some people that can actually define what the requirements are. What do you expect from this?
Yeah, I think that each application's DR requirements are unique, snowflakey. You're never going to be able to satisfy it in the infrastructure. I don't think we should even try. I think let them move the net new applications to CloudStack. It's a losing battle to get them.
And maybe even accept that if you do it in one zone, let's be fair, you have multiple hypervisors, you have clusters, you have all kind of things already. So maybe it's fair enough to say, well, this might be one availability zone. Yeah. But then it's okay.
You could do it, yeah. I've seen customers do multiple zones in a single data center, for instance.
There are third-party solutions to do like replication into VMs from legacy hardware and stuff like that. They're out there.
They're out there, yeah.
Implement those and then script the spin up of the VMs.
And the cool thing about such a solution is also that it's high enough in the stack to also work across all different clouds.
Right.
And that's I would like to find solutions for these things that work on a higher level, so that not only people can go to CloudStack, but also they might want to burst to AWS, for example, or they might want to, and you can use all these tools that we have. Because side-to-side VPN, you can make to AWS already, So if you can connect it like this, it becomes really powerful, and you can use it for all different use cases.
Yeah. So perhaps we just need to outline these various possible use cases and solutions, and
see what maps, what is the same, and then work on that. Yeah.
Okay. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap this up and get ready for the last talk before lunch. But definitely, that conversation should keep on going. I'm just gonna ask one last question, and to wrap up. If CloudStack just focuses on infrastructure and high quality, like well-defined set of features, we become a lean, mean, clouding machine. But we're not really exciting. We're not part of the big news. We work, it rocks, it's easy to deploy. We can manage VM, we can deal with the network, but we're just not exciting. And then, it may have an impact to the community in terms of growing the community and so on. So, what do you think we should do? Do we keep focusing on quality and just infra, or is there something else that we should do so that, people embrace CloudStack more and find it exciting?
I'm not sure that people will adopt something just because it's exciting. I think they'll adopt it because it works. So I like to give the example of Apache Tomcat. You know, everybody here uses Apache Tomcat. How many of you know there's just exactly one developer working on it?
No.
Yeah. So, and between Apache Tomcat 6 and 8, it's gone through 3 JVM revisions. It's gone through 2 servlet revisions. It's gone through WebSockets, everything. And it just works, right? And you guys just use it because you know it works. You have no questions about it. It just works. And I think CloudStack is like that.
Yeah, I think we really need to continue on with our current focus on quality. I think we're doing a really much better job than we have over the past few years. I was just kind of like amazed in the beginning how Wild West it was from a check-in perspective. Whenever I updated from the repo, it was kind of questionable whether or not the code was even going to build. And so nowadays we're kind of getting away from that whole frailty, and I think that is super important. We just need to continue on there and not worry so much about if it's like particularly flashy. I mean, I don't know that quality is like a particularly flashy topic to talk about, but I mean, it's just super important for us. Yeah.
And to be honest, we're not there yet.
No,
right? So
no.
we have to write things, we need to do a lot of work. But to answer your question a little bit more, I think we should focus on this, but also do, for example, what you do and show off with tools that combine a few of the things to show off Terraform. If I demo this to some people, they're really amazed. And I tell them, it runs on CloudStack. I mean, it can run on anything, it doesn't really matter. But you show it like it runs on CloudStack, you can show use cases. We could have used something else as well, but that really makes it like visible, right? So it is this commodity almost that's always there. And by picking a few cool use cases or some fancy tools, that makes people think, wow, that's cool. Whereas it's maybe not really CloudStack that is cool in that way, but actually they might think it's like that because you could use it for it.
Neil?
Well, I think quality is the most important thing, and I think you know what's sexy in IT, right? It's actually none of it, but all of it. And I think you're getting people are rushing to public cloud right now, and you look at what happened this week with the Safe Harbor Agreement. They're going to start to pull out, but they're going to want they want what public cloud offers, right? So whether it's some local service providers or they'll do it themselves. So if that's something that you can offer, and with good quality, so Amazon have built a great business, with their offerings. And people, it's affordable and it's good quality most of the time. So there was something just the other week, wasn't there? But that's obviously what people want.
That's why they call it an availability zone, right?
Yeah, that's what they want. So I think keep on going that way, and I think you're in a good position.
One last question.
Well, one thing I notice is like we'll get things where like OpenStack can do this or AWS can do this and that kind of thing. If there was some kind of a repository of information of what features are in Amazon or what features are in OpenStack in its 5 million various projects and stuff, an analog that would clip onto CloudStack and work for that feature, something that would map. Oh, you OpenStack, well just take CloudStack and add this and you're sorry. That would be nice to have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, guys, and let's keep the conversation going during the breaks and hallway conversation. Thank you.